My mother-in-law and sister-in-law offered to host my baby shower, but showing up early revealed a hurtful secret that changed everything. From the very beginning, my relationship with Linda and Melissa had been rocky. Linda, my mother-in-law, had a way of looking at me like I was gum stuck to her designer shoe. Melissa, my sister-in-law, mirrored her mother's disdain with almost alarming precision. It started small, an offhand comment here, a judgmental glance there. But after I married Ryan and decided to leave my job to focus on building a family, their thinly veiled contempt blossomed into full-blown animosity. They never said the words outright, but I didn't need them to. To Linda and Melissa, I was a gold digger. It didn't matter that I'd worked tirelessly since I was 17, or that I'd put my dreams on hold to care for my mom after my dad passed away. In their eyes, quitting my job was proof that I had married Ryan for financial security. Never mind that Ryan and I had talked about this decision together, or that he fully supported it. They saw what they wanted to see.
And it wasn't me.
For years, I dealt with their passive-aggressive jabs at family gatherings. Must be nice to stay home and relax all day, Linda once said while I was doing the dishes after Christmas dinner. Melissa added, I mean, what do you even do all day? Sounds like the dream. I'd laughed it off, trying to keep the peace for Ryan's sake. But the wounds from their barbs lingered long after the laughter faded. When I announced my pregnancy, I expected more of the same, indifference, maybe even disapproval. Instead, their attitudes shifted almost overnight. Suddenly, Linda and Melissa were all smiles. They bombarded me with questions about the baby, offering advice on everything from nursery decorations to prenatal vitamins. It was disorienting. You should definitely go with pastel greens for the nursery, Linda said during a family dinner. It's gender-neutral and calming. Melissa chimed in, and don't forget a humidifier. Trust me, babies need one, it's a lifesaver. At first, I was skeptical. Their newfound interest in my life felt rehearsed, like they were playing roles in a family sitcom. But as the weeks went on, they only grew more enthusiastic. Then came the offer that left me speechless. They wanted to host my baby shower. We've been thinking, Linda said one evening over coffee. It would mean so much to us if we could throw the shower. Your family, and we want to do something special for you and the baby.
Family.
The words sounded strange coming from Linda's lips. Melissa nodded eagerly beside her, a smile plastered across her face. It'll be beautiful, she promised. We'll handle everything. You won't have to lift a finger. I was hesitant to accept. Their sudden warmth didn't erase years of cold shoulders and backhanded compliments. But Ryan, ever the optimist, encouraged me to see the offer as a step forward. Maybe they're trying to make amends, he said. It could be good for the baby if everyone's on the same page. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that Linda and Melissa were genuine in their desire to repair our relationship. So, despite the nagging voice in my head warning me to tread carefully, I said yes. Looking back, I wish I'd listened to my instincts. There was something too perfect about their smiles, too eager about their promises. But I convinced myself that this was an olive branch. I convinced myself that people could change. I had no idea just how wrong I was. The baby shower was supposed to start at 3 p.m., but I decided to arrive early to help set up. It wasn't that Linda and Melissa had asked for my help. They'd been adamant that they had everything under control. But I'd spent the last few nights making handmade banners and table decorations, and I wanted to ensure they made it to the party safely. Ryan had planned to come with me, but traffic delayed him, so I told him I'd meet him there. I pulled into Linda's driveway just before 2 p.m., the trunk of my car filled with pastel-color decorations. The house looked serene, the curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. As I walked up to the door, I thought how quiet it seemed. There was no hum of chatter, no music playing, no sign of the whirlwind activity I'd imagined would precede the event. I let myself in. Linda had told me to just walk in when I arrived, and immediately noticed faint laughter coming from the living room. At first, I thought they were watching a comedy special or maybe some lighthearted baby shower-themed video. But as I moved closer, the voices became clearer, and my name cut through the air like a knife. I stopped just outside the living room, my arms full of banners and balloons, as Linda's voice carried over the sound of a video playing on Melissa's laptop. Trapping him with a baby, Melissa sneered in the video. Classic gold digger move. At least she'll finally have a steady income. Ryan's wallet. Linda laughed in response, her voice dripping with cruel amusement. The laughter that followed wasn't playful. It was cutting, mean, and entirely too familiar. I felt my stomach drop as the words sank in. My name, their voices, mocking me like they'd always done, but this time recorded, preserved, and replayed for their enjoyment. The video was timestamped from around my wedding. A montage of moments meant to celebrate love and commitment had clearly been repurposed as a twisted joke. I stood frozen in the doorway, my heart pounding so loudly I was surprised they couldn't hear it. As the video ended, Linda and Melissa erupted into laughter again, their heads close together as if they were the stars of some private comedy club. It wasn't until the sound faded that I found my voice, cold and razor-sharp. What the hell is this? The laughter stopped instantly. Melissa's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. Linda's face turned pale as she quickly straightened, her hands fumbling to close the laptop. It's not what it looks like. Melissa stammered, her voice a mix of panic and defensiveness. We were just watching an old video. It's nothing. Nothing? I repeated, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. You're sitting here laughing at a video where you call me a gold digger and accuse me of trapping Ryan with a baby, and you're telling me it's nothing? Linda tried to step in, her voice low and soothing, like she could somehow pacify the situation. It's not what you think, sweetheart. That video, it was just a joke. A stupid, old roast we made back then. We weren't going to show it to anyone. I glared at her, the bile rising in my throat. A roast? You call this a roast? It's vile. It's cruel. And you're still watching it, years later, like it's entertainment. Linda's carefully rehearsed calm cracked. You're overreacting, she said sharply. It wasn't meant to hurt you. We were just letting off steam back then. You've always been so sensitive. Stop, I snapped, cutting her off. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to set the decorations down. This isn't about me being sensitive. This is about you two going out of your way to humiliate me. And after everything, after years of your snide remarks, you want me to believe this is all just some innocent joke? Do you think I'm stupid? Melissa, who had been silent until now, finally spoke, her voice defensive. We've been trying to fix things with you. We've been nothing but nice lately. Do you know how hard it is for us to accept someone like you? Someone like me? I shot back. You mean someone who doesn't fit into your picture-perfect country club fantasy? Someone you've been tearing down behind my back this entire time? Linda looked like she was about to cry, but I didn't care. I was done. Without another word, I turned on my heel, grabbed my phone, and walked out. Their frantic apologies followed me, but I didn't stop. My hands were shaking so badly that it took 3 tries to dial Ryan's number. Something happened, I said when he picked up, my voice breaking. I need you to come home. As I stood in the living room, my hands trembling with anger, Linda and Melissa scrambled like kids caught red-handed. Melissa was the first to break the awkward silence, her voice unsteady as she gestured vaguely at the laptop. It's not what it looks like, she said again, her words rushed and panicked. That video, it was just part of a roast we planned back when you and Ryan got married. A roast? I repeated, incredulous. You call that a roast? Melissa nodded frantically, her face pale. Yes, exactly. You know, like one of those comedy shows where they tease someone but it's all in good fun? That's what this was supposed to be. We were going to end it with a heartfelt message about how much we respect you and welcome you into the family. She tried to smile, but it was shaky and unconvincing. Linda chimed in, her voice trembling but more calculated than Melissa's. It was a mistake. We were just blowing off steam back then. It was meant to be private. No one was ever supposed to see it. She reached out, as though putting a hand on my shoulder might erase everything I'd just heard. We've been trying to make things right with you, haven't we? We never wanted to hurt you. I stared at them, my chest tight with disbelief and rage. Funny? That's your excuse. My voice was shaking, but I didn't care. You've been treating me like trash since the moment I married Ryan, and now I'm supposed to believe this was all just a joke? A joke you forgot to delete? A joke you decided to watch on the day you're supposed to be throwing me a baby shower? Melissa looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers nervously. We've been trying, though, she mumbled, as if that erased years of cruelty. We've been nice lately, haven't we? We're hosting this shower for you. Doesn't that count for something? Her words lit a fire inside me. Hosting a shower for me doesn't erase what you've done, I snapped. Do you think I'm so desperate for your approval that I'll just forget how you've treated me? You've been tearing me down from day one, calling me a gold digger, mocking me behind my back, and now you want me to believe you're the victims. Linda's face turned red, and she stepped forward, her tone hardening. You're blowing this out of proportion. We've been nothing but kind to you recently. People make mistakes. If you're going to hold on to things from the past, then that's on you. Her audacity stunned me. The past, I said, my voice rising. You were just laughing at that video minutes ago. The only thing you regret is getting caught. Their defensiveness only fueled my anger. I grabbed the decorations I'd brought and clutched them to my chest. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of pretending this could be fixed. I'm done, I said, my voice firm. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry I walked in on it. You don't get to treat me like this and then play the victims. Enjoy your little party without me. Linda stepped toward me, her hand outstretched. Wait. Please don't leave. Let's just talk this through. We can fix this. But I was already walking toward the door, ignoring their frantic apologies. My heart pounded in my ears as I left, the sound of Linda's pleading voice fading behind me. By the time I got to my car, I was shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the ignition. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel and trying to calm my breathing. My phone buzzed in my lap, and I glanced down to see Ryan's name on the screen. I answered, my voice breaking as I said, I need you to come home. What happened? He asked, his tone immediately concerned. I'll explain when you get here, I said, wiping away angry tears. Just hurry. By the time Ryan walked through the door that evening, I was emotionally drained. I'd been sitting on the couch with my knees pulled to my chest, staring blankly at the wall as the events of the day looped in my mind. When I heard his footsteps, the dam I'd been holding back burst, and everything came pouring out. They were laughing at a video of themselves calling me a gold digger, I said, my voice trembling. They said I was trapping you with this baby. It wasn't from years ago, Ryan. They were watching it today, before the shower. Ryan's face darkened. Are you serious? He said, pacing the room. I knew they didn't like you, but this is beyond cruel. He ran a hand through his hair, his anger boiling just beneath the surface. I'm going to call them right now. I'm going to confront them. I grabbed his arm before he could reach for his phone. Don't, I said firmly, wiping my tear-streaked face. It won't change anything. They'll just twist it around and make me the villain. I'm not giving them the satisfaction of watching me defend myself again. The fallout started the next morning. Linda called Ryan, her voice shaky with tears. Ryan, you have to understand, this is all a misunderstanding, she said, her tone syrupy with faux remorse. We were trying to make her feel welcome. She just misinterpreted it. Ryan didn't buy it. Misinterpreted, he snapped. You mocked her, Mom. You've mocked her for years. What exactly did you expect her to think? Linda's crocodile tears didn't let up. We've been trying to fix things. I even offered to throw her a baby shower, for God's sake. Do you know how hard we've worked to make her feel like part of this family? Ryan ended the call without saying goodbye. When he turned to me, his expression was a mix of anger and guilt. She's not going to admit she was wrong, he said. She's just going to spin this into some poor Linda story. Melissa was no better. She bombarded me with texts, alternating between hollow apologies and thinly veiled accusations. We were just trying to be funny, one read. Why are you blowing this out of proportion? A few hours later, another message came in. If you think about it, you're the one being cruel by not giving us a chance to explain. The messages left me reeling. Somehow, Melissa had managed to flip the narrative, painting herself as the victim while implying that I was the one at fault for leaving the shower and cutting them off. I knew I should have ignored her, but her words burrowed under my skin. How could they not see how wrong they were? When a third message came through, we didn't mean any harm. Why can't you just let it go? I'd had enough. I blocked her number without responding. I wasn't going to waste another second trying to convince people who had spent years tearing me down to see me as human. But even with Melissa and Linda blocked from my phone, I couldn't block out the doubt creeping into my mind. Their constant refrains, misunderstanding, overreacting, let it go, made me question whether I was being too harsh. Was I overreacting? Was it worth all this drama? I shook the thoughts away, trying to remind myself of the truth. They had mocked me, belittled me, and disrespected me for years. They didn't deserve another chance, no matter how much they cried about it now. But even knowing that, the fallout was far from over, and I was just starting to realize how far they'd go to avoid taking responsibility. Frank had always been the calm center of Ryan's family chaos, the one person I thought I could count on for fairness. While Linda and Melissa had been cold from the start, Frank treated me with genuine kindness, or so I thought. When he called a few days after the baby shower debacle, I was hopeful that someone in Ryan's family would see my side. I answered the call, bracing myself for an awkward conversation but expecting some measure of support. I've been talking to Linda and Melissa, Frank started, his tone measured, like he was delivering a speech he'd rehearsed. They feel awful about everything that's happened. They know they hurt you, and they're sorry. But his voice trailed off, and I gripped the phone tighter, waiting for the inevitable turn. But I prompted, already dreading his next words. But you didn't have to bring up how I helped them professionally, he said, the disappointment clear in his voice. That wasn't fair, and it wasn't necessary. We don't air family business like that. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. That's what you're upset about? I asked, my voice rising with disbelief. Not the fact that they've been mocking me for years, or that they made a video calling me a gold digger, or that they were laughing about it hours before my baby shower. Frank sighed heavily, the kind of sigh that was meant to make me feel like I was being unreasonable. Look, he said, they've made mistakes. I'm not excusing that. But bringing up how I supported them financially during those rough patches, it wasn't relevant and it wasn't kind. Kind, I repeated, my anger bubbling to the surface. What about the way they've treated me? Where was their kindness when they were laughing at that video, or making me feel like an outsider every time I came to a family event? Family sticks together, Frank said firmly, as though that was the end of the argument. You don't throw each other's flaws in their faces, no matter what's happened.
His words felt like a slap.
Family sticks together? I echoed, my voice shaking. So that only applies to them, then? Because they've done nothing but push me out since the day I married Ryan. And now you're telling me to stick by them, even after what they did. Everyone has their faults, Frank said with a calmness that only infuriated me more. Linda and Melissa aren't perfect, but they're your family now. You have to find a way to move forward. It was in that moment I realized that Frank wasn't neutral. He never had been. He may not have joined in Linda and Melissa's cruelty, but he had quietly enabled it, excusing their behavior as mistakes and expecting me to shoulder the burden of their actions for the sake of family unity. I'm sorry, Frank, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. But I can't move forward when the people who hurt me refuse to take responsibility for what they've done. Family or not, I won't just let this go. Frank's tone hardened. I think you're letting your emotions get the best of you. You're about to bring a child into this family. Do you really want to start their life with all this division? I hung up shortly after, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and disappointment. Frank's words lingered long after the call ended, not because they were right, but because they underscored a truth I'd been trying to ignore. No matter how wrong Linda and Melissa were, the family would always protect them. And in doing so, they'd always leave me standing alone. I sat on the couch, replaying my conversation with Frank in my head while Ryan paced back and forth, his hands clenched into fists. I told him everything Frank had said, about how the focus had shifted from Linda and Melissa's actions to my supposed betrayal of the family by calling out their privilege. Ryan, normally calm and collected, looked like he was seconds away from exploding. This is ridiculous, he said, his voice taut with anger. They should be apologizing to you, not twisting everything to make it your fault. I rubbed my temples, feeling a dull headache forming. I told you this is what they do. No matter how wrong they are, they'll always find a way to make me the villain. And now Frank's in on it too. Ryan stopped pacing and sat beside me, his expression softening as he took my hand. We're done, he said, his voice resolute. We're cutting them off. His words hit me like a jolt of electricity. What he means? I asked, unsure if I'd heard him right. I mean, we're done with them. This isn't healthy for you, for me, or for the baby, he said. They've had plenty of chances to change, and they've blown every one of them. I'm not letting them keep doing this to you. For the first time, I felt a flicker of relief. Ryan had always been supportive, but he'd also been hesitant to confront his family head-on. This was different. He wasn't just standing up for me, he was drawing a line in the sand. But as much as I appreciated his determination, I couldn't help feeling uneasy. Are you sure? I asked cautiously. They're still your family, Ryan. I don't want you to regret this later. Ryan shook his head, his jaw tightening. Family doesn't treat each other like this. They've made it clear that their pride is more important than treating you with respect. I've let it slide for too long because I thought it would get better, but it hasn't. I'm done giving them the benefit of the doubt. His words brought me a sense of validation I hadn't realized I needed. But the reality of cutting ties with his family wasn't something I took lightly, and I knew it would come with consequences. The fallout began almost immediately. Linda and Melissa showed up at our house unannounced 3 days later, pounding on the door and demanding to talk. Ryan answered, keeping the door partially closed as he told them firmly that we didn't want to see them. Linda's voice cracked with desperation as she pleaded, "Please, Ryan. I just want to talk. I just want to fix this." "There's nothing to fix, Mom," Ryan replied. "You made your choices. Now you have to live with them." Melissa, standing behind Linda, scoffed. "This is all because of her, isn't it?" she snapped, glaring in my direction through the window. "She's poisoning you against your own family." Ryan didn't take the bait. "You're not welcome here," he said, closing the door in their faces. The following week, Linda returned alone, standing on the porch with tears streaming down her face. "I just want to see my grandchild," she sobbed, her voice trembling. "Please don't take this away from me." Ryan didn't budge. "You should have thought about that before you treated my wife like she didn't matter," he said, his voice cold. "We're done." Watching him hold his ground was both empowering and heartbreaking. As much as I wanted to feel relief, I couldn't shake the weight of what this meant for Ryan, for me, and for our child. The decision to cut ties with his family wasn't just about protecting me. It was a choice to walk away from people he'd known and loved his entire life. As Linda walked away that night, her sobs echoing down the driveway, I felt a pang of guilt that I couldn't fully explain. But deep down, I knew Ryan was right. We couldn't keep sacrificing our peace for the sake of a family that refused to change. The road ahead was uncertain, but at least we were facing it together. The family gathering was supposed to be neutral territory. It was Frank's birthday, and despite the recent drama, Ryan and I had agreed to go. He thought it might help smooth things over, though I wasn't so optimistic. Still, refusing to attend would have only added more fuel to the fire. So I went, telling myself that we'd stay for dinner, exchange polite small talk, and leave. The evening started out tense but manageable. Frank was cordial, though his eyes darted nervously between Linda and me whenever we were in the same room. Linda and Melissa kept their distance at first, sticking to the other side of the table while I focused on chatting with Ryan's cousins. I thought, maybe naively, that we'd make it through the night without incident. But when Ryan stepped away to take a phone call, everything changed. Linda and Melissa wasted no time. They cornered me in the dining room, their faces a mix of desperation and hostility. "You're ruining this family," Linda hissed, her voice low but sharp, her tear-streaked face inches from mine. "You've turned Ryan against us."
What kind of person does that?
Melissa, standing just behind her mother, crossed her arms and glared at me. "Do you really want your child growing up without their grandparents because of your pride?" she said, her tone dripping with condescension. Their words hit like a slap, but instead of backing down, something in me snapped. All the anger, frustration, and hurt I'd been holding back boiled over. I straightened my posture and met Linda's glare head-on. "I'm not the one ruining this family," I said, my voice trembling but steady enough to hold their attention. "You did that the moment you decided to make me your punching bag. You've spent years tearing me down, calling me names, mocking me, and now you're surprised that Ryan doesn't want to be around you? That's on you, not me." Linda's face twisted with indignation. "We've always done everything for this family," she said, her voice rising. "And this is how you repay us? By turning my son against me." Melissa chimed in, her voice biting. "You think you're so innocent? You've been manipulating Ryan from the start. We can all see it." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm even as my hands shook with anger. "You don't get to rewrite history just because you're upset," I said, looking between the two of them. "I've tried to be part of this family. I've ignored your insults, your judgment, your backhanded comments. I've let it all slide for years, for Ryan's sake. But I'm done protecting your egos. If you want a relationship with my child, start by respecting me." Linda's eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought she might actually apologize. But then her expression hardened. "Respect is earned," she said coldly. "And you've done nothing to earn mine." I laughed bitterly. "And yet you expect me to hand over access to my child without question? That's not how this works." At that moment, Ryan walked back into the room. He stopped short, taking in the tense scene in front of him. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice wary. Linda immediately shifted gears, her face crumpling into a mask of hurt. "We were just trying to talk to her, Ryan," she said, her voice trembling. "We just want to fix things, but she won't even give us a chance." Ryan's gaze moved from his mother to me, and I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. "What did you say to her?" he asked, his tone sharper now. Linda sputtered. "We were just trying to have an honest conversation." She twisted it into an attack, as usual. I didn't wait for them to keep spinning their story. "Ryan, I think it's time for us to go," I said firmly, grabbing my coat from the back of my chair. Ryan nodded, not needing any further explanation. Without another word, we walked out of the house, leaving Linda and Melissa fuming in the dining room. As the door closed behind us, I felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, anger, and an ache of finality. "I'm proud of you," Ryan said quietly as we walked to the car. They needed to hear that. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I stared out the window as we drove home, wondering if this would be the last time we ever set foot in that house. For better or worse, I knew one thing for sure. The line had been drawn, and there was no going back now. The day after the confrontation, I woke up feeling emotionally wrung out. My head was still spinning from everything Linda and Melissa had said, and part of me wondered if I'd been too harsh. Ryan reassured me that I'd done the right thing, but the nagging doubt lingered. What if I was making things worse? What if this really was my fault? That afternoon, as I sat in the nursery folding tiny onesies, my phone buzzed with a message from an unexpected sender, Jenna, one of Ryan's cousins. We weren't particularly close, though she'd always been friendly at family events. Curious, I opened the message. "I heard what happened at the dinner," it began. "For what it's worth, I think you're right to stand your ground. Linda and Melissa have always been toxic, and they're used to getting their way. Good for you for not putting up with it." I blinked at the screen, rereading the message to make sure I hadn't imagined it. After all the judgment and cold shoulders I'd faced from Ryan's family, this was the last thing I expected. I hesitated for a moment before typing back. "Thank you. I can't tell you how much it means to hear that. I've felt so isolated in all of this." Jenna replied almost immediately. "You're not alone. Trust me, you're not the first person they've targeted. My mom and I have had our fair share of issues with them over the years. They just don't like it when someone calls them out on their behavior." Over the next hour, Jenna told me stories I'd never heard before. She recounted how Linda had driven a wedge between her and another cousin, spreading rumors and stirring up drama until they stopped speaking. She also shared how Melissa had sabotaged a few of her own friendships by twisting the truth and turning people against each other. "They thrive on control," Jenna wrote. "And when they lose it, they lash out. It's not about you. It's about them." Her words gave me a sense of validation I hadn't realized I needed. For so long, I'd internalized Linda and Melissa's treatment of me, questioning whether I was the problem. But hearing Jenna's stories made me realize that this wasn't about me at all. It was a pattern, one they'd repeated with others long before I came into the picture. "You're not the first person they've tried to steamroll," Jenna said in her final message. "But you might be the first to really stand up to them. That takes guts, and I hope you know that." I sat with her words for a long time, letting them sink in. Maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe I wasn't overreacting. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't all my fault. It didn't erase the hurt, but it gave me a glimmer of hope. For the first time in weeks, I felt a tiny spark of strength returning. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting to break a cycle of toxicity that had gone unchecked for far too long. And I wasn't going to back down. Cutting ties with Linda and Melissa was like pulling a splinter from my skin, painful, but necessary. In the weeks that followed, however, the cost of that decision became increasingly clear. Family gatherings turned into battlegrounds of subtle hostility, even with Linda and Melissa absent. People who used to greet me warmly now barely made eye contact, and whispers seemed to follow me wherever I went. At Ryan's cousin's wedding, the tension was unbearable. Frank nodded curtly at us during the ceremony, but avoided us completely during the reception. Meanwhile, Melissa made a dramatic entrance, throwing sympathetic looks in Ryan's direction, as if she were the wronged party. I caught snippets of conversations, phrases like overreacting and she's driving them apart, but no one dared to say anything to my face. It was clear whose side most of the family had chosen, and it wasn't mine. Ryan tried to brush it off, saying, "They don't know the full story. They're just listening to whatever my mom and Melissa tell them." But knowing that didn't make the isolation any easier. Even Ryan began to show cracks in his resolve. One evening, after Lucas had fallen asleep, he sat beside me on the couch, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. "It's hard," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I know we're doing the right thing, but it's still my family." I nodded, unsure of what to say. I understood his pain. Cutting off people you've known your whole life wasn't easy, but a small, selfish part of me felt resentful. Why did I have to be the one to upend everything? Why did I have to lose any chance at a harmonious family dynamic just to protect myself and my child? "It's not fair," I blurted out before I could stop myself. Ryan looked at me, startled. "What's not fair?" he asked. "That I'm the one who is to bear the brunt of this," I said, my voice cracking. They've treated me like an outsider since the beginning, and now I'm the one paying the price for standing up to them. It's exhausting, Ryan. He sighed, reaching for my hand. I know, he said softly, but I'm here with you. We're in this together. I squeezed his hand, appreciating his reassurance, but the ache in my chest didn't fade. As much as Ryan tried to be my anchor, the weight of our decision was something I couldn't escape. The loneliness crept in slowly, but surely. I missed the idea of family, even if the reality had been toxic. I envied the warmth I saw in other people's families, the effortless laughter, the inside jokes, the unconditional support. I wondered if Lucas would grow up resenting me for cutting off his grandparents, even though I knew I was doing it to protect him. Late at night, I'd scroll through old photos on my phone. Pictures from Christmas dinners where Linda and Melissa sat stiffly beside me, clearly forcing smiles for the camera. Back then, I'd held on to hope that things might get better. Now, those photos felt like artifacts from a life I'd never fully been part of. I wanted to believe we'd made the right choice, but the doubts loomed large. How do you explain to a child why they don't see their grandparents? How do you justify cutting ties when the rest of the world is built on the idea that family is forever? The questions kept me up at night, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. I wasn't second-guessing our decision. I knew it was right, but knowing didn't make it hurt any less. The house is quiet tonight, a kind of stillness that feels foreign after the chaos of the last few months. 7 months pregnant, I find myself spending more time in the nursery, imagining the life we're about to bring into the world. The crib is set up, the tiny clothes are folded neatly in drawers, and the baby monitor hums faintly on the nightstand, ready for a child who hasn't yet arrived. It's all so peaceful, but the peace is deceptive. Beneath it, the scars of everything that's happened still throb. Linda and Melissa haven't reached out since the confrontation at Frank's birthday dinner. For people who once made my life their business, their silence feels strange, even jarring. Yet their absence is as loud as their insults once were, filling the spaces they used to occupy with an awkward, ghostly void. Part of me wonders if this is the calm before the storm, if they're regrouping for another round of manipulative attempts to reassert control. Another part of me wonders if this silence is their way of retreating, of conceding defeat without having to say the words aloud. And then there's the smallest, quietest part of me that wonders if there's any hope for reconciliation. But reconciliation, what would that even look like? Would it mean letting them back into our lives, pretending none of this ever happened? Would it mean swallowing my pride yet again, extending an olive branch to people who have only ever used my vulnerability against me? I don't know if I have it in me. After years of trying to fit into a family that never wanted me, I'm exhausted. I'm done twisting myself into shapes to accommodate their expectations. I'm done compromising my dignity to keep the peace. And yet, the idea of raising a child in this fractured dynamic tugs at my heart. Lucas deserves to know what love looks like, real, unconditional love. Can I teach him that while keeping him away from a family that's supposed to love him but has shown so little of it to me? Am I doing him a disservice by cutting off his grandparents, his aunt, his extended family? The questions pile up, and the answers feel just out of reach. I don't know what's right. I don't know what's fair. All I know is that I'm doing the best I can with the hand I've been dealt. Ryan is steadfast. He doesn't regret our decision to cut ties, though I know it weighs on him in ways he doesn't always say. He misses the idea of his family, even if the reality was often painful. But he's unwavering in his support, constantly reminding me that protecting our peace is worth the sacrifice. For now, I've chosen to focus on the baby, on creating a life where they'll feel loved and valued, where they'll know that their worth isn't tied to anyone else's approval. I'm building a world for them that's safe and nurturing, even if it looks different than I once imagined. The road ahead is uncertain, and the wounds from this ordeal are still fresh. I don't know what the future holds, if Linda and Melissa will ever apologize, if they'll even try to come back into our lives. I don't know if I'll ever find it in me to forgive them, or if that forgiveness is something I even owe them. What I do know is this: for the first time in a long time, I'm steering the ship. The journey may be messy, and the destination unclear, but it's mine to navigate.